Hey guys, today we're in the book of 2 Kings chapter 2. It starts off with the phrase, "Now when the Lord was about to take up Elijah into heaven by a whirlwind." Now, as you read, you're going to find out that Elijah knew this, Elisha knew this, even the sons of prophets knew this. So as we read this, there had to be either common knowledge that Elijah was going to be taken to heaven, or a prophecy, or some other way that a lot of people knew that Elijah was not going to die, but he was going to be taken up into heaven. And so before then, we see that Elijah and Elisha were on their way to Gilgal. Remember, Gilgal is the place right across the Jordan River where they come into the promised land. They built a statue of rocks there at Gilgal as a memorial of what God has done on the border of the Jordan River. And Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here because the Lord is sending me on to Bethel." And Elisha says, "No, absolutely not. I will not leave you." He wanted to stay with him. He wanted to learn more. He wanted to see more of his ministry. Then they go on and they come to Jericho, and he says, "Hey, you need to stay here because the Lord has sent me on." And once again, Elisha says, "No, I don't think so. I want to go with you." Then they go to the Jordan, and Elijah says, "Hey, you need to stay here." And once again, Elisha says, "No, I will not leave you." And then 50 men, the son of the prophets, came and said, "Hey, don't you know that Elijah is about to be taken up?" So we see that a lot of people know this and understand this. But as they come to the Jordan, Elijah took off his cloak, right, the outer garment, and he rolls it up and he strikes the water, and the water was parted. Just as Moses saw, just as Joshua saw, and now Elijah is a part of this group of people, of Moses, of Joshua, and now Elijah parting the Jordan, and they walk to the other side. And when they crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Ask what I shall do for you." This is an amazing question, right? This is an amazing invitation for Elisha. Elijah basically writes a blank check and says, "What can I do for you before I leave?" And we see Elisha instantly ask, "Hey, I want a double portion of your spirit on me." Now, I've heard this preached a million times, and let me maybe correct your thinking on what this means. When he asks for a double portion, he's not asking for a double blessing of the Holy Spirit. He's not asking for more of the Holy Spirit than what Elijah has. He's not saying, "Oh, Elijah, you're good. I want to be doubly better than you are." It's not what he's asking for at all. A double portion. We've seen this phrase several times already. We will continue to see this phrase throughout the Old Testament. This is what is given to the firstborn son. If you have lots of sons, the first son gets the double portion. He gets the double blessing. He becomes the new man of the house. He becomes the successor of the family. And all the rest of the sons have to split the third that is given to them, because the firstborn son gets the 2/3, right? And so that's what Elisha is asking for. He's not asking more than what Elijah got. He's saying, "Let me be your successor. Let me be your firstborn son. Let me continue on the ministry that you have started," right? So I hope you understand what I'm saying here. He's not asking for more than what Elijah had. He's asking to continue on what Elijah is doing. It's a blessing for Elijah to hear this, and it's also a blessing for Elisha to do this. He had a blank check to ask for anything. He didn't ask for anything other than to continue the ministry of God that Elijah was doing. And so that's what it means. And so Elijah says, well, if you see me go up into heaven, it's going to be yours. And if you don't, it's not going to be yours. And what Elijah was doing, it says, well, it's up to God, right? It's up to God if he's going to do that. And then all of a sudden we see in verse 11 that they still went on. And notice what happens. Chariots of fire and horses separated them. Now, I know hymns and some gospel songs tell us that Elijah rode up to heaven in chariots of fire. It's actually not true. It's not scriptural, right? Chariots of fire separated them, right? They're walking along and all of a sudden, these horses and chariots come and separate Elijah and Elisha. Right? They separate them. Why? Because the whirlwind, right? The tornado, the hurricane, the force of heaven comes down and takes him into heaven. So he goes by this crazy force into heaven, not riding into chariots of fire. The chariots of fire is an illustration of the protection of God, of the force of God, right? Think of like, we've seen time and time again that as kings and as pharaohs have moved, they come in chariots. It's their army, it's their protection, it's their power, right? And so when it says that the chariots of fire separated them, the power of God separated them so that God could take Elijah up into heaven by a whirlwind, not by chariots. Verse 12 tells us Elisha saw it, so he gets double portion. So he's going to continue the ministry of Elijah. When he saw this, Elijah saw it and he cried out, my father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen, and he saw them no more. My father, he's not talking to Elijah, he's talking to God. My father, the chariots of Israel, the power of Israel, the hand of God. He saw what Elijah knew, right? He saw that the true power of Israel does not rely on a king, does not rely on a prophet, but it relies on God. It relies on Yahweh, the God of Israel. And so he sees this, and so he gets the double portion. He's going to be the ministry. He comes to this realization, or maybe a fulfilled realization, that God truly is the power of Israel. He tears his clothes, right, because he's in the presence of God, showing that he's sinful, he's shameful. He tears them apart. He takes the cloak of Elijah that apparently fell off, or Elijah threw to him in this whirlwind of him taking to heaven, and he does exactly what he saw Elijah just do not too long ago. He rose it up, slaps the Jordan River, and the river separates. And that's why he asked, where is the Lord? He's not asking, where are you, God? He's asking, is Yahweh here, right? Is the power of God here with me? Am I going to continue what Elijah is doing? And so the best way to do that is to do what Elijah could do. Slap the Jordan River and it parts, and that proves to him that he received the double portion. He will be the continuance of ministry for Elijah. And now all the sons of the prophets at Jericho knew this, they saw this, and they came to him and said, behold, now there are the servants of 50 strong men. Let us go and seek your master. They come to him and say, hey, let us go throughout all of Israel and make sure God didn't take Elijah to Mount Carmel or to this valley or to there. And Elisha says, no, actually he says, verse 16, you shall not sin. You don't need to go. It's stupid. It's just a waste of time, because I know what God did. God took him to heaven. But they go and do it anyways, and they come back to him and said, hey, we can't find Elijah. And verse 18, he says, didn't I tell you, do not go? You just wasted your time, right? God took him to heaven. Now the men of the city came to Elisha and told him of a problem, right? The water is bad, nothing is growing. And so Elisha comes and says, hey, get me a bowl, get me some salt. He puts some water in it. He says, hey, the Lord has healed the water, right? There is no more miscarriages. There is no more sickness coming out of this. That not only the water that is coming out is good for people, but it will be good for the land. And so he's doing a miracle that not only helps a few people, but helps all of Jericho. And if you've been to Jericho, it's in the very bottom near the Dead Sea. It's a flat place, kind of towards the bottom, very dry, very nasty place. And so he goes up there, he goes up to Bethel, which is kind of the southern part of Israel, the southern part of the northern part of Israel, and he kind of, let's say middle Israel, and he goes there and he runs into, it says some small boys in my English translation. In the Hebrew translation, it says young men, which other places in the Hebrew Bible tells us that these were men, right? We would say these are 20-year-olds. These are old enough to know better, right? They're not teenagers, they're not kids, but they're not old men, they're young men, right? They're 20s, 30s, 40s year old men. And it says that they were saying, go up, you bald head, go up. Why are they saying that? They're making fun of Elisha, but they're also making fun of Elijah, right? They're saying, go up, right? Go up into heavens like Elijah. You say, Elisha, you're like Elijah. Well, disappear into heaven like Elijah did. They're making fun of the ministry of Elisha and Elijah while also making fun of what God did, taking them up. And so he turns around and he curses them because they're not just poking fun at them, at Elisha. They're making fun of the ministry of Elijah, of Elisha, and of God, right? So they are not just making fun. They're tearing God down. And so he curses them, and we see an interesting interesting kind of point of this story. It says that two she-bears comes out, and it says that it comes out of the woods and it tore or mauled 42 of these men. Now, that's an interesting point, right? They're making fun of them and it comes out, but notice what it says. It tears up 42 men. 42. When we hear this story, and you probably know this story, you think of just some kids making fun of them. These are not kids, these are men. And it's not just one or two or three kids, it's 42. 42 is not all of them, right? Because it would say it would tore up all of them. So we know that there's a bigger group than 42, but the bears mauled or gouged or tore up 42 of them, right? So in the story, I think a lot of people read this and say, oh, is this some kids making fun of them? No, it wasn't kids, it was men, and it was a gang of them. It was a riot of them. And so when it says that he cursed them, he's probably protecting his life. That there's a group of men, more than 42, that are out making fun, poking fun, saying all kinds of things, probably pushing, being a little physical, getting rowdy. And so Elisha curses them, and God sends these bears, mauls 42 of them, probably the rest run, and probably saves Elisha's life in this part. I know that's a lot, but there's some stories that we know and some stories that we heard, but there's some key things there that maybe you learned something different today. So I hope that makes a little bit more sense, and we'll see you tomorrow in chapter 3. God bless.